Hey guys, welcome back. In the last video, we looked at natural selection, genetic drift, and a few other outcomes, gene flow and mutations, and how they contribute to evolution. We had introduced the Hardy Weinberg principle, which was the theoretical allele frequency. Today, we'll start off by looking at sexual selection. So, organisms have a tendency to select their partners so as to continue their pool of genes in the future generations. This phenomenon is known as sexual selection, that is, choosing your partner for having sex, in simple terms. So, there are two ways in which this can take place. There is intersexual selection. In this, it is the selection for mating, and generally, it is the female choice. As you can see, inter meaning between two sexes. So the female, in most organisms, it is the female who chooses its male. And there's several reasons for this, which we will discuss below. And then there's intrasexual. Intra referring to same sex, within the same sex. This is the competition to mate. And generally, it is male-male competition. That is, two or more males fight or present themselves or suit in order to gain the attention of a female who will probably then choose. So these can be related. In most organisms, they're interdependent. In others, the female doesn't really get a choice after male-male competition takes place. So why does the choice generally of that of the female? So this is known as a fundamental asymmetry of sex. And there are two main reasons. The high price of eggs. Females produce typically lesser number of eggs than male produced sperms. The egg is also larger in size and contains much more like nutrients that are important for the developing embryo. Further, the female also invests a lot more resources in the development of the organism than by males. Again, there are certain exceptions, such as seahorses, in which the male is responsible for the upbringing of the young one. However, in most organisms, the female typically invests more in the younger cub or in the newer generation than the male. The, the main goal of the male organism is to reproduce as much as possible, while the female controls how good or how viable the next offspring is. Because females invest so much in the younger cub, they want to make sure that they mate with the right kind of male. That is why the females generally make the choice. Then we have the Bateman-Travers hypothesis of sexual selection. This fundamentally reflects the fundamental asymmetry of sexes, in which we talk about the investment, the ideology, that is, the male ideology of having as much sex as possible versus the female ideology of checking to see if the male is actually capable of producing a viable offspring, more than viable, a capable offspring. So if a male is able to fight and survive and be strong, things that are considered to be more masculine, it is likely that he has that encoded in his genes, and this will pass on to the younger cub. Of course, this is not so much true in civilized society, and humans may differ in outlooks and etc. But we're talking about animals in their crudest form over here. And last but not the least, we have fitness, which is the ability to produce viable offsprings who can reproduce on their own. An important aspect is to look at now is sexual dimorphism, which is the traits that differ between males and females, each of which provides the certain advantages or disadvantages they have in order to compete within themselves or to attract female attention, depending on what the organism uses, intersexual or intrasexual methods. Then we have the frequency-dependent and independent selection. In this case, allelic frequency is directly proportional to fitness, in which it is independent. And my bad. So when allelic frequency is directly proportional to fitness, we have a dependent selection. However, when it is inversely proportional, we have an independent selection. Last, we finally come to Hardy Weinberg principle. This is used to analyze changes in allele frequencies. There are a few key terms that we need to understand before we dive into the Hardy Weinberg principle. The first is a population. Whenever we talk about evolution, we're always considering an entire population. A population is a group of individuals of the same species that live in the same area. A gene pool is the next concept. It is the hypothetical group of all alleles from all the gametes present. For programmers, it's basically like a set of everything present, like an array. Now, we looked at Mendel's monohybrid cross. So one gene gave two alleles, let's say A1 and A2. So Mendel in this had talked about a species. Hardy Weinberg, however, deals with the population. Now, allele or genetic frequency is the probability that an allele is present. Now, we must remember that summation of allelic frequencies is 1. Traditionally, Hardy Weinberg equilibrium is denoted by P and Q, which are the genetic frequencies of two separate alleles. Now, we have summation of allelic frequencies is 1, therefore P plus Q is equal to 1. Now, if we square both sides of this equation, what is that we get? We get P squared plus Q squared plus 2PQ is equal to 1. I'll just write the intermediate step. P plus Q the whole squared is equal to 1 squared. That's A plus B the whole squared, which is A squared plus B squared plus 2AB is equal to 1. And now, if we draw a Mendel type cross for this, we have P squared, we have PQ, PQ again, and Q squared. And from this, we get the same equation. P squared plus 2Q squared plus 2PQ is equal to 1. So those are the two important equations we need to keep in mind while we talk about the Hardy Weinberg equilibrium. And these are the frequency of the alleles and the population. So now let's take an example. If P is 0.7 and Q is 0.3, remember they have to add up to 1. I would want you to find, just pause the video for a second here and find the number of individuals, the probability that the individuals will have a genotype of PQ, that is heterozygous. So let's take a minute and solve that. Okay, I hope you have given it a shot and we'll just solve it real quick. So P square is equal to 0.7 the whole square, which is 0.49. Q square is 0.3 the whole square, which is 0.09. Now we know that P squared plus Q squared plus 2PQ is equal to 1. Therefore, 0.49 plus 0.09 plus 2PQ is equal to 1. Therefore, 2pq is equal to 1 minus, whoops, I guess I ran out of space. Give me a sec. Just scroll down. So we have 2pq is equal to 1 minus 0.49 minus 0.09, which I believe is 0.51, 0.42. So the probability is 42%. Now, there are certain assumptions that we made during Hardy Weinberg equilibrium. The first is random mating. That is, we presume that there is no sexual selection and the mating is truly random. However, non-random mating can have certain repercussions such as inbreeding depression. This increases homozygosity and allelic frequencies do not change in a population. This can be quite disastrous for a population. The second assumption that we make is there is no natural selection. Natural selection effectively leads to non-random mating in some sense, and a particular set of traits is favored due to environmental or other factors. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium does not take this into account. Third, we presume that there is no genetic drift. That is, the population is as is, and a small part of the population does not form a new set of population. Fourth, we presume that there is no gene flow, that is, two populations and there is no interaction present between them. And the last but not the least, we assume that there are no mutations. If there are mutations, it is likely that the frequencies are going to change somewhere in the middle. And Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, again, does not take that into account. We will conclude on that note, and thanks a lot for watching.